esteemed panelists for taking our time today and joining this session. So this is a very interesting session. When we were researching and we were talking to the industry people, we realized that, and it came as a feedback, that brands are looking to grow, but one of the biggest problems that they face within their organizations is that, that teams are working in silos. There is a very, I won't say no coordination, but very less coordination. So as individual brands, how are you breaking those silos, so that they are more cohesive in nature, they are able to talk to each other, and then like a cohesive strategy can be used. So Akshay, we'll start with you first.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. I run a company called FITPASS. I don't know how many of you are users here. We've recently launched our D2C segment, which is about a year ago. Primarily before that, we were a B2B2C company with selling our product to insurance companies and banks. So this problem did not arise as much. But now that in the last year, our D2C segment has been growing about 100% month on month. And currently we're clocking about 3 crores revenue in retail per month. I think this problem started happening for us when we were in an experimentation stage where people wanted to run a lot of experiments, and the only way to do that was silos. Because if everybody got together, then most people would debate and action would not happen. But I think once those experiments got set and we knew what was working, what was not, I think there is more coordination automatically. And because there's so much dependence in every avenue of marketing or avenue of growth, I think it is unavoidable that people don't talk to each other. So I think the only thing we do is that we have a culture which is very open. People can talk to anybody. People can walk into anybody's cabin. So I think it's just the culture, and just having curious, inquisitive people on the team, I think is what makes the difference. So when you're hiring, if you're able to check for intellectual ability and the ability to get a job done, I think that will ensure that everybody will talk to each other, will communicate, because everybody has things to learn from each other then. So I think if the environment is right, I think communication, collaboration is an outcome.
Interesting. Sumit, you are one of the leaders in your own category, and you're a traditional legacy brand, and you have processes defined, and so how difficult it is and how challenging it is to break silos within teams, because all of them have their own processes, and sometimes it becomes very difficult. As a CEO, I'm sure you have your own challenges, how to make sure to make them come on a single page and work towards a single objective.
Thanks, Devesh. Firstly, it's amazing to be here. Good evening to all. Our company name is Signify, but I think all of you would have used our products, Philips Lighting. We have been in this country for last 100 years. And we say that we are the second biggest light source after sun, right? So that means that whether it's a hotel or it's a parliament building or it's a Rashtrapati Bhavan or it's your own home, we will have some presence. To answer your question, Devesh, I don't think it's easy. For a company of a particular size who's been existing for a long period of time, it takes time to break silos. There are a lot of experts in individual ways, and it's amazing to be among founders, because I think I'm here to basically learn from all these new age people, how are they really breaking that. But what we have realized is that if we don't do that, then there are going to be many, many more new companies who are out there who will take our plate. The other thing which is amazing in our industry is that now lighting is no more conventional lighting where you used to have that incandescent bulb which used to last for 6 months. Now all of that is digital lighting. So it gives you data. So it's smart cities gives you data. You can customize things. So now there is a big data available from the products itself. And then there is a data which is available through your customer journey, etc. So what we are trying to do, I don't think we have reached the level where we have to. But the idea is that now across supply chain, product development, marketing, sales, in B2C and B2B, there are enough and more tools where the data travels. The only problem which I have seen is that how many of them are looking at the data with the same understanding, because everyone looks at it in a different way. So to answer your question, it's not easy for a company like us to really break those silos, but we are trying, because if we don't do that, then I think there are many who will take our place, which is, it's existential threat, I would say.
Interesting. Naya, coming to you, from your early days to Good Glam Group. I mean, how are you seeing at Good Glam Group, of breaking the silos within the teams?
So hi everybody. Good evening. I know it's late, so thanks for listening in and staying back. I think it's a really interesting and important question. And I want to kind of talk about actually silos are basic human nature, right? If you just think about it, we've all pretty much grown in, and like as humans, we like retreating into our comfort zones with like-minded people who have with us a shared purpose. That is the basic of
Yeah.
silos, right? So I think it's not always easy at the organizational level to think about how do you like break silos, because it's actually breaking and kind of looking at behavior change at the heart of it. I think two things that seem to work, and of course everything is work in progress, is one is as a founder or as a leader, to kind of reimagine your role from being someone with authority to actually being a community manager. So, kind of re-envision your teams and our teams as communities. And, that kind of like gives you a very different lens or a framework on how to even deal with people and what their motivations are. And as a community manager, the perspective also shifts from them being in service of you and your business versus you being in service of them, right? What that inherently does is actually create a lot of trust in the system. The second thing that's super important is actually looking at shared goals. We talked about like human behaviors, right? Why do we create silos? Because we think that the person I'm in a silo with, we have the same motivation, and that's why we want each other to succeed or be together with, right? Or have that like-mindedness around. I think the minute all of us come together as teams and basically say that we are in service and we have a North Star, which is the customer experience or the customer product or the customer impact,
Yeah.
right? That again, I think is a very, very major silo breaking move. But the pathway to that is something that everybody has to co-create together. So there is a dependency that's well established in that session or the series of sessions or on a daily basis, right? That basically makes that happen. One very practical tip I also want to share, this I took right from the Baby Chakra days, and then we implemented Good Glam at scale. And of course, Good Glam was super complex because there was a bunch of founders and teams and different motivations coming together, was the 360. It is something that I learned my time at McKinsey, and then we implemented it in Baby Chakra. And the 360 is that, and we all know 360, but the way we did it was that everybody in any exposure group would actually evaluate you. So there was a big, big part of your evaluation, your formal evaluation, your bonus, everything else that was dependent on collaboration. And that is something we've rolled out across the group. And actually, we've seen a significant uptick in therefore knowing that the dependencies exist, the network of dependencies, and also like knowing that it is actually not just the right thing to do, but also in my best interest to actually collaborate.
Interesting. Deepak, what's your thought on this?
Sure. Thank you for having me here. I think the panel got late, so the sponsors had announced a free trip to Bali if everyone sitting outside comes in. So, yeah,
We'll
I
announce
think,
that on social media after a discussion.
yeah, and everybody's reading who are the sponsors now. So the top one is sponsoring 2 tickets, but let's see. Yeah, jokes apart. I think, I think there are multiple silos that exist. One is, like if you go traditionally, we saw there was a lot of cabin culture that existed in every, but you enter any startup today, you find everything is so open, right? You can speak to anyone, you can see what the other guy is speaking and all other stuff. So you start interacting. And there is an importance of breaking those physical silos. Then definitely there are cultural silos that exist. So there are always a silos between an old employee and a new employee. There is always a silos between a founding team members and new members. Also the seasoned ones and experienced ones versus interns and stuff like that. So a lot has to be done. Fortunately, in startups, the environment gets more cozier, easier, and the discussions happens more on multiple things, and that makes those particular silos break off. We do a lot of activities specifically to make sure that the silos does not exist, or at least go off with time. And that's basically starts from the day one somebody joins into the organization and understands what we do and stuff like that. And at least the first 8-10 days, he has to probably go through the departments before getting back to his own department and taking the seat out there. And these are like more interactions and understanding how each department of the organization works. We also have a tradition that everybody has to sit at the back of a phlebotomist and go and see a sample collection by himself, right? And this is for almost everyone in the organization. So you can actually choose nearest spot to your home, and there's some phlebotomist who would probably tell you that he will pick you from the place and then you can go, because you need to understand what consumer feels in the morning and how everything goes in, and understanding that. And then obviously getting a test done from us also is a compulsion. This is between you are hired to you join the company, right? So, and we also see how many did not join because the test was not that great for them. But that doesn't happen because large amount of people experience the service and understand that what is this company up to and what is that they want to do. And once they join in, they go with the flamboyant and see the pain points of the organization. I think all of that starts to nudge them and tell them that it is much beyond their entire responsibility. And it goes on to them when they come back to an organization, third or fourth day, you will see a lot of people have a lot of suggestions. So this happened at my house, this is what I saw, this is what it could be, and stuff like that. And that's the discussion that we wanted to obviously ignite. And that has helped us since day one. And I think we are continuous. This is more of a tradition now at Healthians that we continue.
Interesting. Sumit, as a legacy brand, how do you see, technology as an enabler? Because Naya made a very interesting point that at the end of the day, the goals for all teams, sorry, goal for all the teams is to deliver a great customer experience. Okay, and it's important to break silos. So, how do you see technology as an enabler in breaking those silos and achieving that end goal objective of delivering scale, growth, and a higher customer experience, superior customer experience?
It's a huge thing technology is bringing. Also, I would say silos is not something which is existing today. It's been existing for many years, right? Um, One of the things which we definitely need to do is to have goal setting. For an organization like us, if you look at our employees, if you look at our, they are in different vintages. It's an organization which has existed for a long period of time. It has product as one of the elements, service, installation. So there are different kinds of people. There are people who have spent 40 years in the company, and there are people who have come in as management trainees. What technology is doing is actually bringing the fact to each and everyone, in spite of having goal sheets which are same, right? I think it's usual thing to have same goal sheets to make sure that incentives are structured in a way that you only win if the team wins. I think all that is all that is there. But what is becoming even more critical is because the technology disruption which is happening at the consumer level. Today, when you're going and buying any product, earlier you used to go and buy a product in a particular way. Today you do that in multiple ways, and the way you do it also is very different. If you don't have a service which is right, you're going to go back to the internet and in the social media and are going to talk about it, right? You also want influencers to talk good about it. So I think what technology has done is change the consumer experience. And when that problem comes, nobody can say it's a problem of one department versus the other department. So for legacy organizations like us, we are being pushed to change and break the silos. Because if we don't do that, the response to the customer itself is going to be very different. Now, there are different tools of technology which have come in, right? So whether it is AI, which we invest quite a lot in terms of really predicting how the customer journey is going to be, whether it is to absorb all the data, take the analytics out, and make it far more relevant for the last mile, whether it's a retailer or whether it's a interior designer, and how do you use that data to, and it's the same data shared across. So I think technology is firstly pushing legacy organizations like us because the customer is changing. And there are a lot of things which we are doing as an organization to bring the same data across to all. And all of that is visible today. Whether you are going to a retail outlet, how much time are you spending in the retail outlet, what kind of width are you putting it? Not only you, everybody is able to look at it, right? So I think technology is changing quite a lot, and these tools are helping us to break silos. But I agree with her. It's far more cultural, and for legacy companies like us, it's not easy. I would not say it's easy to break that.
Yeah, because we keep hearing a lot about, that traditional organizations have undertaken a journey of digital transformation, and they are revamping their entire processes. So how difficult, how challenging that process is?
I think that's not challenging. For a company which has money to spend to get more tools, etc., is not a challenging thing. To change people to use it is far more challenging, right? So, for example, not having cabins is something which we had last 7 years back. CEO bhi saath mein baithega, everybody has to sit together, and that is the way we will break the silos. I think it happens. I think it's a phenomenal idea to actually bring everybody together so that there is visibility. But at last mile, at every level, usage of technology is not the same. You can do lot more from it, but people don't use it at the same level. So there is, sometimes I have seen my HR team, my finance team, my marketing team pushing people to use tools in a way which will make decision making better. But I don't think it comes naturally to everyone to use tools, because there are just too many tools. I mean, just need to there is a IT tool for everything today. So
As a D2C brand, Akshay, you're born on technology. Okay. So how easy is that comparison, in your case?
I think let me first, so because we're still talking about silos, I think in our industry where the biggest silo that existed was demand and supply, right?
Right.
We work in an industry where gyms are our core partners. Gyms, this industry in itself was one that was designed where the consumer was not king. So there's one silo, the consumer, where the consumer had to pay the gym upfront for the whole year. Then the gym sort of hoped that you don't come for the year, right? So inherently, this was one industry where fundamental distrust was a lot, and the consumer was not king. Usually, in every other industry where Naya will talk of, or Deepak will talk of, or even Sumit will speak, consumer is king, right? Their willingness to pay, their ability to pay is paramount. In our industry, the gym said, if you pay me 40,000, you can enter my gate, otherwise you can't. So the first silo we had to break was was to bring gyms and the customers closer. And that could only happen through technology, where we could aggregate demand at such a scale that because we what is called the shared economy principle, because we aggregate demand and we give it to the gym, we can sort of democratize how much the customer has to pay, when they have to pay. So I think that was the biggest solution that technology provided us. And once that started happening, I think to bring it internally to say how teams will operate and how people don't have silos through technology, I think what Sumit said is absolutely correct. You have so many tools. You have so many ways of collaborating for tasks. You have so many ways of pulling data. You have so many business intelligence tools, but not everybody looks at it the same way. Right? There's a stark difference between how my network team, which might be the guys who manage our gyms and partners, their sensitivity is very hyper local.
Yeah.
Right? They will not look at data the same way. Maybe my head of growth, who's looking at 1.1 million customers a month and how their behavior patterns are across the network, how he will see a gym and how my network person will see that same gym is very different. So the same data points mean very different things. So you cannot just putting tools doesn't help. I think it is the culture that you build, that where communication is open, where people discuss, where people understand what business goals are, what mission you're solving, what everyone already spoke of. I think that is the core where silos get merged.
Interesting. Deepak, do you agree, with Akshay? It's a confluence of culture, tech, and people. In the acceleration of growth and putting together the silos.
Yeah, I think specifically if you look at growth stories from the industry, and specifically if you reflect inside, it has a lot of role to play. A lot of feedbacks is basically coming from a last mile, which is basically, in our case, it's a completely online platform, and the interaction happens with a guy who comes at home and collects samples. And he never comes to the office, right? This guy is always on the field, and he goes from the field back to the lab and goes home, right? Getting that feedback from that last mile and giving it to the people who are actually, even as long as just designing an ad somewhere sitting in the marketing, is the whole chain, which is not possible unless you have technology in, right? So there's a lot of that. What marketing does is shown on his screen so that he can speak to the customer in that language, which means, is it a gold customer, platinum customer? What is the LTV value? Does it has more number of users in the same family? What is his preferable time and stuff like that, to take a lot of decision, right? At the same time, he also understands on his app that this consumer is basically a diabetic consumer, and last test was repeated 3 months ago, and and probably 3 people in this particular family is also diabetic, right, at the same time. So that helps this guy who's at the front standing and talking to the consumer at that point of time to actually do a lot of upsell. And we have this great number which comes as big as 28% of our sales coming in on the spot when a guy is sitting in the house. So this can only happen when a marketing guy sitting in the office is thinking what can be done, and the interaction is happening at the front end, which does not have any connection in between, but a technology solves that particular problems. And that dashboards that both of these teams see is the same dashboard, right? So they can easily make out that this is what is reflecting into. And step ahead, they get into a prediction of demand, what sort of a test, what sort of a disease is coming in, what sort of a geography, what sort of a training, and stuff like that. And all that is imparted to the person who's on field without coming to the office. So he's probably has his own learning screens where a lot of videos are posted. So he learns about that particular video. So supposedly somebody launched a new test when COVID came in, right? Or something like we do a lot of genetic tests. Now you have a new test, which is a gut microbiome, which is becoming so popular in India. Now, how can a guy who's just a technician would get to know how to sell a gut microbiome, or what is it all about? So all that is being done at one end and then probably thrown on that particular end, and then the feedbacks are taken from there, which I think has been helping us to grow. And it's a case study that we have seen that it accelerates, because then they also send feedback back and we work on those particular feedback, change the pricing and stuff like that. So I think it is very, very important. We have live examples for that.
Interesting. And yeah, as we talk about tech being the enabler, so a discussion cannot be finished without the role of AI. AI being the enabler in the growth. How do you see AI being the enabler of growth at the Good Glam Group?
I can talk ad nauseum on that. But I just want to start off with a small thing. We talk about silos and talking about the biggest fights I think we've had in every company have been with the engineering team and the leadership team on moving from WhatsApp to Slack. I don't know if you've all experienced the same, but the biggest fights are about and that goes back to core human behaviors, right? So I think the broader point I want to make is that, again, I think to break down silos, all of us as leaders first, but equally members of this larger community, to really examine what are the behaviors that are preventing us from breaking these silos, right? Now, coming to the AI question, I mean, we live in an unprecedented time. I mean, it is a time that keeps me constantly excited about. And if I think about the future forward, right, the ways of interaction, the UIs of interaction have completely changed. How did we interact with the UI of digital first? It was through search and through social, right? And I just actually wrote a post about this. Thank you for the question, actually. And that whole paradigm was a paradigm where, if you really look at it very objectively, there were two parts to it. One paradigm was the fact that you were actually asking a question on Google, and we were being trained in how to search on Google, or you were posting opinions on social and people were responding, and it was in the best interest of both of these platforms, so search and social, to actually give you a diversity of opinions, because that would actually give them more monetization. Right now, the UI with generative AI and the AI assistant model has completely changed in a one-to-one interaction. Right? If you think about it, it's an AI assistant, be it Gemini, be it Copilot, whoever the word, right? They are basically having a one-on-one interaction with you. The monetization model has changed to you being not the product, but you being the service the product is out to serve, right? And therefore, the information they give you needs to be palatable to you as the customer, and it's going to be an echo chamber at the end of the day, is my read, unless we do things right. So what does it mean from a product creation, from a distribution paradigm, right? It means that we as marketers, as business builders, need to really rethink the rails of distribution, digital distribution of our products. The search, the social paradigm is where we are at today. The paradigm is changing, right? And how do we incorporate ourselves in a way that's intelligent and relevant and hyper-personalized in a new generative AI, search, conversational AI paradigm, I think is key. The second thing is, a lot of the data that these generative AI models are built on is past data. It's refreshing very, very quickly, but it's still past data. Therefore, while we talk about pattern recognition, there's still a very, very strong case for human intelligence, right? And I think it goes back to that. How do we build our teams to be extremely agile, of course, but also retain their creativity and help them re-engineer their way of thinking and problem solving for a new paradigm where they're looking at data and they're looking at insights, looking at predictive models and predictions, and not just following it blindly. They're analyzing it with a very different lens. So I think the future for us, not just at the group, but I think overall as an ecosystem, is where the human augmentation to artificial intelligence is absolutely critical. We need to think about reskilling, upskilling our teams and ourselves. And number two, we will rethink the rails of discovery for the products and services and for our own brands that we're out to build.
I was having a discussion with a couple of marketeers an hour ago. So they were talking about, from an execution point of view, how the two teams are working differently when it comes to the execution of a campaign versus giving a context to the campaign. The two teams are working very differently and they're extremely in silos. And some of the major goof ups or major feedbacks that happens on the customer experience is because most of the some of the campaigns, they are out of context and the consumer is not able to resonate to them, and it ends up hurting their feelings. And that is when the execution team is working in silos without having a context to this. So do you think that is a huge challenge to the industry?
100%. I mean, and I think it's going to continue, by the way. I think it's only going to get more pronounced. And it's not because of lack of will or lack of ability or lack of whatever. It may not always be a cultural issue or an issue of reconciling KPIs and OKRs and all the goals, right? It's actually an issue where your customer is in so many places today. She is offline, she is online, she's discovering you through a conversation with a friend, she's discovering you on WhatsApp, she's figuring you out through a conversation on Copilot. It's just such a scattered footprint and such a scattered, therefore, visioning of the consumer. And while I know that, and I love these conversations, we have a lot of fellow founders I talk to on the Martech side, right? And we all kind of commit to a 360 perspective. It's impossible to get a 360 perspective. And this is why, Devesh, it becomes even more important for human augmentation and intelligence to come in.
Absolutely.
Right? Because that's where your people on the ground, your insights and your gut as leaders or people who've built in that space, your team's combined intelligence really comes in. And then the problem statement is a bit different. You harness the power of technology at different points to create as best as possible a holistic view of your customer. But then after that is a bit less science and more gut.
Absolutely. The time has come up, but before I close the session, a quick word on how do you see AI as the enabler of growth, as a key strategic driver in growing the organization, scaling the growth, and breaking the silos. Akshay, let's start with you.
I think I'm going to echo what Naya said. Obviously, what the potential of AI is really with the business owners, with the rules and intentions they set. So I think owning that and understanding that the power is limitless and what you want to do with it is consequently limitless. I think for us in our space, India is a country which is the youngest country in the world. 50% of the population is below 35. We were discussing earlier that we were the diabetic capital, but we're now the second largest population who have diabetes, which represents about 14% of the population, I think. But 50% of Indians are still below 35. They're not diabetic. They're not hypertensive, they're not sick. And if they become sick, India can never become a $5 trillion economy, right? Because that economy is fueled by consumption, not by buying medicines. So for us, with AI, anything that we can use to understand consumer behavior, to understand outcomes, to prevent unhealthy outcomes is what is going to give us scale in an era where personalized intervention is the key. Making solutions that people can do on their own time, at their own will, is key. And that can only happen if we have tools that make it simple. So AI, once the business scales, I think then the organization scales, right? So when you put the customer first, you understand their needs, and just think about how many body types, how many gene sequences, how many different health parameters we're getting, because every lab that is collecting information, and we've started processing this with the NDHM, which is the National Digital Health Mission. Everyone has different biomarkers, right? Everyone has a different bio-difference interval. Your sugar should be between this and this. That range is different to every lab. Now, how do you standardize that? Because you may have got it from Healthians, but somebody else may have got it from somewhere else. Now, how do I standardize that? How do I recommend a program to you? So all of that can only happen through AI.
Absolutely. Sumit?
Yeah, AI is it's an amazing thing which is happening, and I see both on a growth side for the business as well as on profitability side. There are so many things which we are able to do now. I think in our company we are using it. Of course, customer acquisitions, he said, how to do that, but also a lot of productivity which is being brought up. Our product development is becoming faster. AI, which is more general, but using that also creating the models for your own company to make electronics, designs faster. I think there is so much potential to AI. But one thing I want to actually, leave all of us the thought with is customer acquisition, profitability, all these new things which you are talking about is to acquire, and he said, lifetime value of a customer. I think customer is bigger than a lifetime value in my mind. Uh, as long as you are able to deliver your product, as long as you are able to deliver the experience of your service, the focus, if it is on that, and then AI only becomes a tool, enabler, all technology to do what you are doing better every day. But you cannot take your eyes off from what you are delivering to the customer, whether it's a service or a product. Everything else, I think we should not get lost into it. Everything else is just an enabler to make that thing better for the consumer.
Naya, your thoughts?
So I literally wrote a LinkedIn post on this because I've been thinking about this topic for the longest time. The first time I heard about Gen AI, by the way, was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years back when it was just starting off in the US, and I was meeting one of my investors, Anand Chandrasekhar, and he was down in India, and he was telling me about LLMs, and I was like, what is LLM? Like, I studied law for my undergrad. I was like the master's program, but like that is literally like my first exposure, and since then I've been just fascinated. Now I want to caveat everything I say right now by I am an AI optimist. I'm a very future optimistic person, but there are two cautions I would just lay out. One is there are a lot of data. We all know how AI LLMs are trained, right? There's a lot of data sets that do not exist on certain extremely critical future forward topics. Women's health being one of them, for instance, right? Or number two, patterns of funding. Past patterns of funding, we know both BFSI as well as risk capital, venture capital, private equity, largely male dominated in disbursals, right? So what is being fed into these models, apart from like, and I call it the immortality bias, that will continue because it is based off last data, right? And that data doesn't exist to like correct it in future. So I think that's one big watch out that we as leaders and creators of a new future for all of us need to keep in mind, and also how we analyze what the data spews at us, right? I think the second thing is just, I think, to really think about the role that AI will play in our lives, right? And how do we reskill and upskill ourselves? And I've mentioned this in a previous comment, but I think it is more critical than ever. The education systems we all grew up with were industrial age education narratives, right? The fact that we sit in a classroom today is an industrial era byproduct. So I think if you think back, work backwards from 20 years, what that future looks like is
Correct.
what we need to be thinking about upskilling ourselves in and our teams in. I think just want to leave that thought. I'm very optimistic on AI, please note. But I think there are definitely cautions and the bias watch outs we need to keep in mind as we build.
Absolutely. Deepak, last thoughts?
Yeah, quickly on that, I think, yeah, and for us, we see endless possibilities. Something that we used to do more with algorithms in 2014-15 is pretty well done with AI today. Specifically in healthcare, like she just said, you can't just be 100% dependent upon what AI is doing. So it needs a human touch and it needs an extra layer. What we use this AI is largely, initially, every doctor was looking at a report from a last health record. Today, we basically analyze that report over the last 4, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years health record, and not only for that person, but a similar sort of profile of a person in a similar city and in a similar demographic. So a doctor gets a much better view of what is happening and what could be the possibilities, and a diagnosis becomes easier. And we have some live results for that happening in. So when you look at data, not in silos, but data in the historic form and trends, it shows a very different sort of a thing. So for us, it makes a lot of sense to use that and obviously give more empowerment to the consumers who have the reports in their hand. so that they can ask right sort of a question and they can take right sort of a step with definitely a human layer and touch over that. And going ahead in terms of breaking silos also, and we were talking about how AI is using that. So I think it's a tip that everybody can take that we've used from day one and we've been really, really successful is we have some prompts within our organization which is common for everyone, right? So a Martech team or a consumer service team, whenever they want to inquire anything or they want to write a new campaign or a new line or a new creative or anything, they have to for sure within the whole organization go to the same prompt, right? And the same prompt is used by everyone in the organization who's writing to a client, to a corporate guy, or to anybody else. That makes sure that the communication is throughout same, right? We don't use an external platform. We have created our own LM of how do we feel, what our values are, how do we talk to our consumers and stuff like that. And today we see there is a synchronization between the entire group of people who are writing outside either a normal email or a campaign or a Facebook campaign or anything else. And that has worked really, really well for us because everybody speaks the same language. So this is one of the tip that I can give out of what we are using, but we've done plenty of them together. Even all our HR policies are now a prompt. So if you want to ask an organization that should I take this or should I do this leave or should I do this policy, answer comes as in from a HR policy LLM, right? So you take a right decision sort of a stuff.
Nice, nice. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Some really interesting insights on how we can break silos and accelerate growth within our teams to deliver a great customer experience and scale the organizations. Thank you very much for joining.